The YT Capra Core 1 might just be the best bang for your buck Enduro ripper on the market. Stay tuned to learn all about this alloy beast in the latest tech check feature on loamwolf.com. The YT Capra has been the mainstay Enduro bike in YT Industries lineup for quite some time now, and it's safe to say that they've been pushing the performance further and further to make their flagship models some of the best performing on the market. But YT hasn't forgotten about their value-minded, kind of budget-friendly roots, and they've been pushing the performance of their budget models as well, such as this Capra Core 1, which comes in at just $2,699. They say that it keeps the Stoke levels high, but the price low, and thus far we have no reason to disagree. So let's get into it. With the Capra Core 1, YT was keen to keep the level of performance so that even the most demanding of Enduro riders would still be happy, but without the finishes and features that make somewhat trivial differences out on the trail. With this, they've still got the option of a 29er or a mullet wheeled setup. There's either 165 or 170mm depending on that wheel choice in the rear end with their Horselink V4L setup, and then up front you've got 170mm 38mm stanchioned fork. While they were reducing the price tag, it would have been really easy for YT Industries just to cut all the features and lower the quality of the frame. But instead of doing that, they wanted to ensure that customers would be able to take their Core 1, to give it a lot of abuse, and also to see value in upgrading the components on it as they went along and keeping the same frame for a longer time. So this Capra is made with a combination of cold forged components in that aluminium frame, as well as some double butted hydroformed tubing to keep the weight down, the stiffness in the right places. You get the same flip chip on the link, which gives you two geometry adjustment positions, and they use the same asymmetric frame design, which allows support and stiffness to be added to the front triangle without removing the ability to fit a water bottle in there. Rather than using a big flip chip to make a big adjustment on the frame to go between each wheel size, instead YT figured that they would be able to tailor the wheel size in the frame with different geometry as well, so they have totally independent rear ends for their bikes depending on the mullet or the 29er that you select. Add to this the two different chainstay lengths that they use depending on the sizes. So you've got the small through to the large sizes, which use a 5mm shorter rear end length than the extra large and double extra large sizes. Then it's clear that the Capra Core 1 is not a frame that has had the corners cut. By retaining the wheel size specificity and the flip chip in that lower link, they were able to achieve the same geometry as their higher tier models, so you get the same kind of performance and feel on the trail regardless of what model in the lineup that you choose. To touch on the key geometry numbers briefly, this size large Capra MX has a 64° head tube angle and a 77.4° effective seat tube angle. In the low setting, the bottom bracket is 21mm on average between the two different height axles. The rear end is 433mm and then grows to 438mm for the extra large and double extra large sizes. And then you've got a 464mm reach and a 636mm stack. The wheelbase in total adds up to 1246mm, so it's certainly not a super long bike, but certainly it's a number that gives you a fairly balanced overall performance. So that's all you need to know about the YT Capra Core 1. Now let's take you through the build process before taking it out onto the trails and see how it performs. YT is a brand that's always been quite well known for their value, and part of the way that they achieve that is through the direct sales model, where you would typically go online, order one of their bikes and have it delivered directly to your door in a box ready to be built up yourself. These days they do have their YT Mill locations, so you can go into a brick and mortar store in a couple of locations around the world and pick up a bike already built for you, but most people are definitely going to be ordering their bikes online and having to go through the build process themselves. So we're going to show you what that entails, and then you'll be a little bit better prepared for doing that if you do receive a YT Capra to your door. So let's get into it. So YT makes it as simple as can be when they deliver their bikes. They've certainly delivered a number of bikes direct to consumer before, so they give you a nice manual to walk you through the different steps, as well as a toolkit giving you everything that you need to build your bike step by step. So in just a few quick and easy steps, you take your bike from the box into a bike that's ready to hit the trails with nothing more than just the tools that are included, plus maybe a tyre pump. So I reckon now that it's ready and built, let's go hit the trails and see how it performs. So as with all of our tech check features here at Loam Wolf, this is not intended to be a long-term review. We've not had the bike for a huge amount of time, but we've been able to get it out into the trails for a few rides to form our first initial impressions. From the get-go, pulling this thing out of the box, I was kind of struck by the overall quality of it. It is not a budget-minded bike in the impression that it gives you as you pull it out of the box. Everything seems to be put together really well. The details are all pretty well covered. The paint finish on this thing is absolutely stunning. And yeah, it just doesn't really give you the notions of a cheap bike that it might be if you were to consider that price tag and the kind of level of components you're getting on it. Out of the box, getting it set up, I thought might be quite tricky to get it set up into a sort of zone where I was comfortable on it, because you're given such limited adjustment. You've only got rebound adjustment on the shock, you've only got a simple compression damper and rebound adjustment in the fork. So, you know, as doing what I do, I get to ride a lot of bikes with the high-end top-tier dampers. I get to spend a lot of time fine-tuning those dampers and getting them figured out to get the best performance out of those. So the kind of notions that I have of a cheaper damper and a less adjustable rear shock are that I'm not going to be able to get a kind of high performance feel. That didn't transpire to be the case, and I got this thing feeling pretty damn good straight away. The YT suspension setup guide helped me get into the right ballpark, and it was pretty close to the settings that I ended up settling on. So yeah, I think you can't really complain too much, especially if you're not the kind of rider who likes to constantly fiddle with their suspension. The overall weight is certainly a bit higher than the Capra Core 4 that I've tested in the past, both the 29er and the Mullet. So you do feel that a little bit when you're starting to accelerate the bike on a climb. But other than that, you still get the same level of climbing support when you're pedaling. You still get the same seating position on the bike that puts you in a nicely centered position. So other than the very start of when you start accelerating and you're trying to accelerate up to speed as fast as you can, there's really nothing to tell between the kind of the top end bikes and this Core 1 here. Getting onto the descents, and that's when I was starting to get really impressed by this thing. Of course, if you're just going to spin your way up the climb, it's never going to make that huge of a difference. But on the descents, I was expecting it to fall back far from the Core 4 that I've tested in the past with a $56.99 price tag, but that didn't tend to be the case. The component package that YT's put together and the level of performance that they've managed to achieve with this aluminium frame is really quite impressive, I think, and I think a lot of customers are going to be really quite happy with this if they put their money to it. Talking about the components on here, you know, things maybe don't look quite as refined, quite as premium as a Kashima coating on the fork, but the SRAM DB8 brakes, it's not a brake set that we've used yet at the site for a very long time, but they prove to be every bit as good as a code from my initial impressions. I've not managed to put a lot of miles into them to find out their durability in the long term, but certainly the initial impressions show that they're a solid performer. The only thing that maybe set it apart from a more expensive bike was the NX drivetrain. The feel of the shifts, the way that they slot into each position on the cassette isn't quite as refined as the higher end GX and XO1. But that said, they were dependable, they never really put a foot wrong, I didn't often miss shift, so I don't think you can complain too much, and it's maybe just something that you can look to upgrade further down the road. The other complaint, which is the one that I had with the original, the Capra Core 4 that I tested in the past, is the XO tyre spec that YT puts on this bike. Yeah, I won't get too deep into it. I don't think it's suitable for the abuse that the rest of the bike can take. But that said, it keeps the overall weight down a little bit, makes it a little bit nicer to climb and play about on. So for riders who don't demand a much more durable and more damp tyre casing, that, like the double down or downhill casings that I think would be more appropriate for this thing, they're still a solid tyre, and they've definitely been providing plenty of grip out here in the desert in unfamiliar terrain to me. Thank you so much for watching this tech check feature on the YT Industries Capra Core 1, and thank you to YT Industries for making it possible for us to film this. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, leave us a comment, let us know what you think of this $26.99 Enduro Ripper, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our long-term review on it and the future videos on the site. Thank you so much for watching, catch you out on the trails.